It's Q&A time. I just can't. Because I'm just so not snobbish. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've all had a fantastic January. Tonight, I thought I would finally get around to this Q&A video. I'm opening up the questions here. There's a lot of questions, so I'm going to do my best not to waffle. I was going to film this video last night, but in the end, I couldn't face it. I had a tough week. I do have a beverage here. It looks like wine, but it is not wine. It's a non-alcoholic wine by a company called Altina. I don't think it actually tastes like wine, but it tastes fancier than, say, a normal fruit juice. So it is a nice thing to have when you want to feel like you're having something special without actually having alcohol. I haven't looked at this for a little bit. I know I did go through a few weeks ago and like all of the comments, but I didn't really look at them. And I did that deliberately because I want this to be a little bit more off the cuff. I don't want to feel like I've rehearsed it. First question is, do you think that Iris Panthea smells like Coco Mademoiselle? I don't think so. I used to own Coco Mademoiselle and I got rid of that one because I felt like the patchouli was a little bit too screechy for me. But now you've got me wondering. Okay, so I have here a sample of Coco Mademoiselle Intense. I'm still going to compare them because I'm hoping, from memory, I don't feel like the Coco Mademoiselle Intense was vastly different from the Coco Mademoiselle Eau de Parfum, with the exception of I have a feeling that maybe that screechiness and stuff in the top was less of an issue in the Intense than it was from the Eau de Parfum. So if anyone remembers what the difference between this and the Eau de Parfum is, please feel free to note that down below. Yep, I'm getting it now. That is definitely Coco Mademoiselle. I'm still getting quite a lot of that patchouli. It is still quite crisp in the opening. I feel like I'm getting lots of citruses and maybe even some kind of fruit and pink flowers. I think there is a bit of iris in here. It smells pink. And yeah, I'm getting a lot of bright juiciness in the opening together with that quite crisp patchouli note and some iris. So let's now spray Panthea Iris on my other hand. I have just had a shower and I haven't actually put any perfume on tonight. So I guess this is what I'm wearing tonight. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, they're not similar to me at all. They're very different. So Panthea Iris to me opens immediately with the iris front and center. It's quite lipsticky. It's not too powdery, but it is a little bit powdery, so it's nicely balanced between the lipstickiness and the powderiness. It is also kind of earthy as well. And this smells, when I think of color, I feel like this is pink, but this one is more like a bluey lavender, sky blue lavender sort of tone. It's a lot softer. It doesn't have the fruitiness of the Coco Mademoiselle. So in the Coco Mademoiselle, as I said, I get lots of citrus in the opening. And I do feel like I'm getting, I don't know, something else, like a candied fruit note, almost quite similar really to the sort of candied fruit that I get in Mon Guerlain, which kind of smells a little bit like boiled lollies to me, you know, those boiled fruit lollies, but it doesn't smell that much like candy. It's not that sweet, but to me, at least in the opening, they're quite different. So I now have them on, so we'll see how they wear, I guess, and if I remember, I'll circle back at the end of the video. Eugene from You Smells Good says, if you had the power to make anything in the fragrance universe disappear, what would it be? Look, it's probably going to be a little bit contentious, but I would probably say dupe fragrances. And I know that's probably an unpopular opinion. I think that imitation and dupe fragrances have their place. You know, when things get discontinued and people really want to be able to source something that was similar to what they had before, you know, I think maybe that's a good space for them to sit in. I know that I'm coming from a very privileged position in that I can, you know, afford to buy, or have been able to afford to buy, a lot of perfume in my lifetime, and more than I can wear in my lifetime. So it's probably not going to be received well that I say this, but my background is in intellectual property. I mean, I deal with intellectual property every day as part of my day job and have for many years, and it really irks me. I feel like having all of these imitations come out on the market really devalues the talent and the artistic endeavor and the labor that goes into creating these really amazing fragrances. But yeah, I really feel for the perfumers, I guess, when stuff like that happens. Maybe not so much the brands, or unless the perfumer owns the brand. Yeah, I feel bad for the perfumers when their stuff gets copied and people are touting all of the dupe stuff. And I know that not everyone can afford the real thing. I'm in a position where I can't really afford the real thing either anymore. And I'm really having to be very careful about where I spend my money, because I can't just do what I was doing before and, you know, buy a bunch of fragrances. I still do buy a lot of stuff secondhand, so that does help. But yeah, I guess I'd rather, if I really like something, I'd rather my dollars go to support the person who created it rather than support a company that has a GC and can reverse engineer something. So, okay, so name one perfume that puts you off and why. What differs between good and bad perfumes according to your nose? And as you are a chemist, do you pay attention to substances of a perfume? And do you take into consideration clean or vegan fragrances, or do you believe it's just a gimmick? Wow, that's a lot of questions. Thank you. A perfume that puts me off and why? Well, we've already talked about one, I guess, and that is Coco Mademoiselle, which, you know, as I said, I used to own, but the patchouli in the opening really hurts my head. And I guess that's, okay, let's go with that. So fragrances that have this element to them that is extremely loud, and it's designed to be that way because they want it to be loud, not because it's part of the scent profile necessarily. So for example, one that's popping into my head is Fleur Narcotique by Ex Nihilo, or Valaya by Parfums de Marly. Really beautiful perfumes in the sense of the scent profile is just stunning in both of those perfumes. I really liked both of them, but they both had different ingredients added to them, I think, but there was something about both of them that had been added to them to make them very loud and deliberately kind of obnoxious almost, and very headache inducing. So I hope that answers your question. If I think of a better example, I'll come back to it. But for now, I think I'll just leave it at that. It's anything that gives me, I guess, a massive headache because it's designed to be super, super loud. And the thing I think that really bothered me about the Ex Nihilo one in particular was the fact that those scent profiles are really enjoyable to me generally because they are light and they're airy and they're ethereal, and, you know, they don't punch other people in the face. And it kind of disappointed me, I guess, that they just had this element to them that was designed specifically to be really loud. What differs between good and bad perfumes according to your nose? Well, I think I just answered that, and that is this need to make things loud. People want things to be loud and obnoxious, and they want their perfume to enter the room before they do. And yeah, I find that, you know, let the scent profile be what it is, and, you know, don't try and, I guess, force it. It's like forcing a square peg into a round hole. I'll get off my soapbox now. You as a chemist, do you pay attention to substances in a perfume? Interestingly, I actually don't. I don't sit there and read ingredient lists of perfumes. I did for a little while, but that was usually when I was trying to pinpoint specific synthetics that mimic real things, and I was trying to learn about synthetics that mimic real things. And yeah, so no, I don't actually sit there and peruse ingredient lists on perfume. I am an industrial chemist. My background is chemistry. I have a PhD, but it's industrial chemistry. So think mining and resources, that sort of stuff. So I'm not a cosmetic chemist, and you know, I can look at a perfume bottle at the ingredient list and not know what half of those things are. Chemistry is a very specific field, but it's also a very broad field, and you can specialize, like anything, you can specialize in different areas. And one day, if I ever can find enough time, I would like to, I guess, maybe educate myself on the chemistry of perfume a little bit more. But for now, no. Although I did recently look at the ingredient list on a Byredo hair perfume, and I did a little TikTok video about it. I think it was my first or second video on TikTok. I haven't done that many TikTok videos. And I made a little video because I noticed that there was alcohol in the list, and I thought that was really confusing. And I posted the video without doing any research, and sure enough, someone did answer the question, and that is that not all alcohols in cosmetics are bad for your skin and hair, and that not all of them strip, you know, moisture out. So which makes sense to me, because when I think about my organic chemistry years and years and years ago, too many years for me to want to think about, I do recall, yeah, different types of alcohols, and you know, they're all two different things. So no, I don't peruse ingredients lists generally. Do I take into consideration clean or vegan fragrances, and do I believe it's just a gimmick? I think if I'm reading that something is vegan, generally I will take that as a given that it is actually vegan. If I read something as being clean, I am usually skeptical, because it's so easy to say that something's clean, and what does that really mean? And even vegan, I guess, it kind of depends on how far they go down through their supply chain, I guess, to be able to claim that things are truly vegan or not. To be honest, I confess I don't. And part of the reason, you know, why I guess I don't really think about it that much is because I'm often buying my perfumes secondhand. In a way, I feel like doing it that way, it saves me money, obviously, and that is primarily the main reason why I do that. But I feel like it also means that if I'm buying a perfume that's not vegan, then I guess I feel like maybe I'm not contributing directly to the proliferation of that brand doing more, but at the same time, you know, I guess I am, because things are still being bought and sold, and that's creating demand in the market. So the answer is no, I don't. But when I think about it, I think a lot of the perfumes in my wardrobe now, and the ones that I tend to go for, do tend to be from the types of brands that are vegan just by their very nature. Yeah, I don't. And now I feel bad. Okay, next question is, what have you learned from your no-buy year? Would you do it again? Kisses from Portugal. I think there's going to be a few questions about my no-buy year. I learned so much from my no-buy year, but probably a more recent revelation from 2023, now that I've had a bit of space between the end of my no-buy year and now, is that what I've come to realize is that my issue maybe wasn't with perfume specifically, but rather just a general shopping addiction or an issue with shopping. I don't want to call it an addiction because I don't want to label it, because I'm not a medical practitioner and I don't know. But I feel like my real issue really came down to shopping, because what I realized is that during my no-buy year, I was very successful at not buying perfume, but I didn't really save that much more money than the years before. And what I came to realize was that, yeah, I wasn't buying perfume, but what I did was redirect that same energy into something else. And I ended up buying actually a lot of makeup in that year and a lot of tech equipment for this channel. So I have quite a few tripods now, but effectively, yeah, I feel like I realized that my issue wasn't actually with perfume specifically. It was more broader than that. And in fact, it was more of issue with how I was dealing with my downtime or how I was coping with things that were going on in and around my life. So yeah, that was probably the biggest revelation I had. And the other biggest revelation that I had, which also might play back onto my earlier unpopular opinion around dupes and imitation fragrances, is that it's not going to kill you if you don't get that specific perfume that you're lusting after. And here's the thing, chances are in a couple of weeks' time there'll be something else that you'll be lusting after. If you're lucky to get to a couple of weeks, sometimes it's literally days after you've bought one thing, you start lusting after something else. So it's not about the perfume. There is no one holy grail perfume that is going to be the answer to all your prayers and change your life. It just doesn't exist. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just perfume. And there's always going to be another perfume that smells great and which may grab your attention for different reasons, but none of them are necessarily required for a happy lifestyle, and none of them are going to change your life. So yeah, they were the realizations that I had from my no-buy year. Tell us about your love history with your husband. Okay, well, we've been together for 5 years. We actually met at a work function, which is kind of boring. And what I can tell you is that when I met Matt, we were in a courtyard with a bunch of people squished into this tiny courtyard, and he introduced himself. We just started chatting, and I just remember I didn't speak to a single other person that night until we got called for dinner. I never spoke to anyone else in that courtyard. There was only Matt. And I was just totally enthralled by him. And I wasn't even at that time thinking, oh, wow, this man is like the man of my dreams or anything like that. I was just thinking, wow, this person is so interesting. And we literally just stood there for the entire afternoon at these welcome drinks that we were at. And we didn't see anybody else. And in fact, it's like when I think back on that evening, I think it's like a movie. It's like a love scene in a movie when they hone in on the two people and everyone else in the background is all blurred out. That's exactly how it is in my memory when I think about that afternoon and talking to him for those few hours that we were talking. So yeah, he just captured my complete attention, and he continues to do so. He's just the most incredible person, and I'm very, very lucky to have someone like him in my life. Okay, so the next question is, what are your non-perfume fragrant favorites, and how did you learn to create YouTube content? Oh, okay, so the second question, I trial and error. I didn't know anything about creating YouTube content before I started creating YouTube content. And then I did I think my first video, and it was really bad. It's still up. You can go watch it. Actually, probably the first several months of videos were really bad. And then I started, watching other content on creating videos, and I've just, over time, I learn new things, but I don't actually implement a lot of the stuff that I learn because I'm so time limited with this. So I don't often have the time or energy to try and implement all these fancy editing techniques and making things more cinematic. The most I really do is sort of play around with my lighting and maybe occasionally change up my camera or use a different mic. So tonight I'm using a mic that sits on top of my camera. Normally you'll notice I have a little lav mic clipped to me, but for someone who's been doing this for almost 4 years now, I really haven't progressed my techniques that much compared to other people that you might see. I don't consider myself to be extremely talented in that area, but I've got a camera, I've got a mic, I've got some lights. I figure that's enough. Really, you're just here to see the perfume anyway, right? What are my non-perfume fragrant favorites? So are we talking products in terms of fragrant products, or are we talking favorite smells that are not perfumes? because, you know, damp earth and cut grass, summer rain on a hot deck, the smell of puppy breath, the smell of a horse's muzzle just between sort of like their upper lip and their nostrils. It's really velvety and soft, but the smell is just so amazing, and there's nothing else in the world quite like it. It's really hard to convey, but pretty much all horses smell like that because they pretty much all eat the same stuff, right? But the smell of horse sweat and leather also smells really great to me. I don't think horse sweat smells bad at all. I think it smells very clean, and there's something a little bit musky about it, and it just smells so comforting. I used to ride horses as a kid. We owned horses and showed horses for years. So it really was only when I went to boarding school that I stopped riding as much. And then when I finished high school and went to uni, you know, I didn't get back into it. And all of our horses are buried on my parents' property. They all just lived out their geriatric years in comfort, and yeah, but we never bought any more horses. So yeah, I think those are my favorite smells, my favorite non-perfume smells. But if we're talking about candles and stuff, there's loads. But what I might do is park that and do a different video, because somebody else in a different video did comment and asked me to do another candle video. So I might do that separately if that's okay. Oh, and the smell of baking bread. I love the smell of bread, even though bread is one of those things to me that smells way better than it tastes. The next question is, what's your advice for someone just starting in their fragrance journey? Things that you've learned over your time with perfume, and where did you grow up, and what made you become interested in fragrance in the first place, and where did it all start for you? I love your gentle and silly nature, especially when it comes to perfume, which can be so uptightist and elitist. Thank you so much for saying that, because you know, I'm extremely introverted, and even now, just talking to a camera is so hard. Even after 4 years of doing this, it's so hard to talk to a camera. It's so hard for me to even look at somebody when I'm talking to them, because I just can't. It's like a wall that I can't get over. And I get so nervous, and then I can't form my sentences, and everything gets blocked up. It's horrible. And I say this because people often think that I'm a massive snob because of my demeanor and the way that I speak. And, you know, I speak slowly because I can't form my sentences. So yeah, I'm actually just really shy, and it really upsets me when people think that I'm snobbish, because I'm just so not snobbish. But anyway, so I'm digressing. I'm getting away from that. Wasn't even a question, that was just a statement, but thank you for saying that. And yeah, I hope I do make people laugh a little bit. I guess I am trying to allow myself to just be myself a little bit more on camera, but it's taking a long time. Okay, so what's your advice for someone just starting in their fragrance journey? Look, I know people say this all the time, it's really boring by now, but just sample things. Sample lots of things, and don't be in a rush to grow your perfume collection. A sample vial for me will last, you know, if I really want to go to town with it, it'll last maybe 2 or 3 days. But if I just wear it normally, it'll go probably a couple of weeks. And that's if I'm wearing it consistently. So just don't be in too much of a hurry to buy bottles, because the thing is, especially when you're just starting out and you haven't smelled that many things, you go through this phase of it's like a hockey stick curve where you just go through this phase of, you know, expanding your mind and olfactive knowledge really, really quickly, and well, if you want to. And you know, I made the mistake definitely of, especially when I really started to dive into more artisanal fragrances and things like that, and just, you know, the fragcom community in general, I just went absolutely nuts. There is no rush, I guess is what I'm saying. There's no rush. You could, if you really love perfume this much, then you'll be doing this for pretty much the rest of your life probably, and you'll be constantly exploring new things and sampling things and trying new things, and there's always going to be more perfumes. If I had my time again, I would stay on the samples. I started out just getting samples and decants, and I very quickly morphed into buying full bottles of stuff, and if I had my time again, I would just stay in the sample realm and keep my collection small. Things that I've learned over time with perfume, I think my main thing is that I just alluded to before, but never rule out a scent profile just because you didn't like it the first time you tried it. And this is a dangerous mindset in a way, because, you know, in a way, being able to filter things out and say, I don't like that sort of thing, it's a good thing in a way, because it sort of limits what you're willing to spend your money on. And the more things you discover that you like, obviously the more things you're tempted to buy. But yeah, I think just be open-minded about the things that you're smelling, and approach it with curiosity rather than a like or dislike mentality. So when I'm smelling something and if I don't like it, I still keep smelling it, because I want to try and understand what it is that I don't like about what I'm smelling. So I think I'll leave it there, because this video is going to get very long if I keep doing War and Peace on every single question. Where did I grow up and what made me become interested in fragrance in the first place? I grew up in Western Australia. I was born in Perth, Western Australia. I grew up in northern Western Australia in a place called the Pilbara. It's like a region of Western Australia, and it's kind of remote. Or when I was there growing up, you know, decades ago that I was there, it was very remote and quite sparsely populated. And I grew up in this little country town. There wasn't really much there, and hence why we had horses, because that was our thing. You know, that was our entertainment, our hobby, and the whole family was into it. And what made me become interested in fragrance in the first place? I don't remember there being a specific thing that got me interested in fragrance. I've just always liked nice smelling things. I've always liked the smell of things. I remember, you know, I still remember the smell of the very first puppy we ever got when I think I was about 5 or 6. And I still remember, you know, trawling through my mother's vanity, and, you know, she had lots of crystal on her vanity, and my mother is very into crystal things, and she had this crystal perfume bottle that had the puffer atomizer, which was all broken and didn't work anymore. There was like this tiny little bit of perfume in there that had dried up at the bottom, but you could still kind of smell the perfume. If you squeezed the puffer, you could still get that little tuft of air and kind of smell the perfume for a few years. And then as I got older, that dissipated. I don't even know what that perfume was, actually. It was a very old school type perfume. I think kind of like an ambery musk type fragrance, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I don't remember there being anything specific. You know, my mother always wore perfume. She's worn Youth Dew for my entire life. Only recently she changed her perfume, and that's because I sent her something different. Well, I asked her, because she said she'd stopped wearing her perfume. And I said, why have you stopped wearing your perfume? She said, well, you know, I've been wearing this for decades and I'm kind of sick of it. And I went, okay, well, let me send you some stuff. And so I sent her some samples. They don't know that I have this. My parents don't know that I have a YouTube channel. They just know that I'm really into perfume. So I just sent her some samples, and she really liked BDK's Bouquet de Hongrie. So I ended up buying her a bottle of that a few months ago. And so now she's wearing that. Anyway, so no one in my family was particularly into perfume, but we all wore perfume. Dad always had a cologne. Mum always had a perfume. My sister always had a perfume. I loved the smell of things. I liked the house, my room to smell nice. I used to spray my body sprays and stuff around my bedroom, because when I was a kid I wasn't allowed to have candles. So, and then when I became a teenager, my mother, I don't know how she got into it, but she got into sort of essential oils and stuff for a bit, and then consequently later in life I did too, but that's a whole other story. But I used to burn oils and things like that to scent, you know, my room or my home or whatever as I got older. So there wasn't anything in particular. I just liked smells. And I remember as a child having a massive collection of Impulse body sprays because they were the only things I could afford, or the only things that Mum could afford to buy me, I guess, is the more accurate thing. And but I remember when I was probably about 7, my mother gave me a little mini of 4711 cologne, and I treasured that thing. You know, I eked that thing out for years. That thing lasted for a long time, just because I thought it was so special. I think I'll leave it there. Hopefully that answers your question. Next question is, I'm pondering over sampling a bunch, narrowing before buying full bottles in my head. I know this is sensible, but part of me wants to go rampant and buy everything on my wish list because that money is better used on a full bottle. I know I must sample, but the allure of blind buying is all might. What are your thoughts? Well, there's kind of two things in there. There's the thing about blind buying, and I think what you're saying there is that the thrill of blind buying is kind of fun for you, and it is. It's very much like gambling, I think, and I think a lot of people, me included, sometimes I still blind buy things too. I blind buy things with the expectation that I'm probably not going to like it though. So usually if I'm blind buying, I have two main criteria. One, it either has to be cheap, or if it's not cheap, it has to be something that I think I could reasonably resell pretty quickly for about the same price. So those are the two things. And that's, I mean, it's a personal thing. If you want to blind buy. I don't really enjoy blind buying that much anymore, mostly because I don't want to be adding full bottles to my collection randomly anymore. I have a lot of perfume, and I just, it's excessive, and I don't want to be buying full bottles of stuff if there's a very good chance that I'm not going to end up wearing it or liking it, and then I have to offload it. And that leads me on to the first part of your question, which is the value question. So I actually had this conversation with somebody a few months ago on Instagram. They messaged me and said, you know, how do you justify buying smaller format bottles and decants and stuff when, you know, the price per mil of the perfume is so much cheaper when you buy the bigger bottles? And I'm going, yeah, but okay, think about it this way, especially in the context of blind buying. You've got a $200 bottle of perfume, right? You might be able to source a sample of that for, let's say, $20, including postage. So you're saying that you don't want to spend, let's actually do the math on this. So let's say the average size of a sample is about 2 mils, and you spend $20 including postage on a sample to get that, which means that puts the value of that sample at about $10 per mil, okay? A bottle of perfume, let's say it's a 50 ml bottle that's going for $200. That puts the value of the perfume at $4 per mil. Yeah, that's a huge difference. However, if I buy that sample for $20 and I get it and I realize I use maybe a couple of sprays out of it and I realize that I don't like it and I'm never going to wear this thing, I can always either, you know, I could ditch the sample if I feel that it's not worth dealing with it anymore, and that's pretty easy to do. There's not much guilt associated with that, because at most I've only lost $20 and I've maybe used a couple of bucks worth of, you know, of the juice anyway, so I'm ditching something that's worth less than $20. Or I could maybe resell it or give it away to somebody else, or I could resell it potentially. Lots of people in our local Facebook group sell used samples in bundles and stuff, and just to recoup a bit of money. I haven't done that, but it seems to be something that people are happy to buy. So you might get, if you then resell that sample, you might be able to sell it for, you know, let's say $10. Let's say you could get half price for it. You probably wouldn't get half price, but let's say you could get it for half price. All in all, it's a low value transaction, okay? If you, on the flip side, if you get that sample and you really love it, then you've got 2 mils to use up before you invest in a full bottle. So at worst, again, still you've wasted 20 bucks, but you haven't really wasted 20 bucks because you got value out of that sample because you would have used it up and then bought a full bottle. So you've spent $220, but you've got a bottle that you genuinely know you're going to use, right? Okay, so that's dealing with the sample. You get the, let's say you blind buy you decide that it's better value to blind buy the bottle. Now, this can go two ways. The first outcome is by happenstance, you actually really love it and you're going to use it up. Great. You've spent 200 bucks. You're going to use the bottle. You didn't have to make that initial $20 investment. Okay, sure. You're up 20 bucks. Great. What happens when you get that bottle and you don't like it? So you've opened it, you've sprayed it a couple of times, you've realized you don't like it, you don't want to keep it. Now you have the burden of offloading this thing. Everyone has a different opinion on this, but generally when you're reselling something that has been opened, it's very difficult to get the same amount of money back or even close to the amount of money back that you spent on it. Because the reality is that bottle, if you're going to resell it, has to be heavily discounted in order for somebody to find value in buying it secondhand, because there is a risk to a buyer buying a secondhand bottle because they don't know really what they're getting. It could be a fake, they don't know. So there's a risk in purchasing something secondhand. And for most people, and this, I certainly think this way too, if I see somebody selling a bottle of perfume that I'm seeking in a secondhand forum on a Facebook group or something, and they're trying to resell it for, I don't know, even above 80% of the original price, I will sit there and weigh up, depending on whether or not I know this person or not, I might sit there and weigh up, am I better off just buying it retail brand new? Because for what works out to be maybe an extra $20 or $30, I can get a guarantee and a warranty, really, that if there's anything wrong with the bottle that I purchased from the store, I can take it back and get it replaced or a refund or whatever. That is the mentality of buyers in the secondhand market. So you've got this $200 bottle of perfume, you sprayed it only twice, you're thinking it's worth, I don't know, $195. And all the other buyers in the market are looking at it going, that's worth 160 bucks. Because in general, the rule, and I think a lot of people in our local Facebook group use this rule, that even if it's pretty much brand new, if it's been opened and sprayed, automatically 20 to 30% off the price to resell it. So then you're selling a bottle of perfume for, let's say you knock 20% off, that's 160 bucks that you're now selling it for. So you've already lost 40 bucks right there, which means you've still wasted more money than the original cost of buying the sample in the first place. So that's just how I think about it. The math just doesn't add up. It seems like it's better value to buy the bottle, but if you don't know if you like it and if you're not sure you're going to use it, it's actually not better value. If you're going to think about it in monetary terms, if there's some other intrinsic value that you feel you get from blind buying a perfume or just having that particular perfume bottle sitting on your shelf, great. That's something that I can't comment on and I can't make that choice for you. But the math is pretty black and white. If you buy a bottle of perfume and then try to resell it in the secondhand market, you are never going to get the value back on that perfume, even though you've only used a milliliter of it. So that's it. I'm going to stop ranting now. I think Matt has prepared dinner and I have been talking for a little bit now. So what I might do is make this a part one and say good night. And then I will come back and answer the rest of the questions maybe tomorrow or maybe later this evening. But I might just keep these videos in two parts so that, they're a little bit more easy to digest. So thank you if you got through this, and stay tuned for part two of the rest of the questions. And thanks for the questions, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.